All right, good evening, afternoon, whatever. All right, so not going to really show you any screens this one. This was just one thought that I forgot to put in my previous stream. I did one earlier before I got the good news about my employment status about, the whole predator catcher debate, and how that's very heated from both sides. The one school of thought, the obvious is, yeah, let's bust some perverts. They should be taken off the street and insert word of choice. And then there's the other side of the coin is, they're just doing it for clout, and they're just as evil as the people that they catch. So it's just very polarizing energy from both sides. Now, let me just make this clear. If you're doing something shitty like that, then yeah, you deserve what's coming to you. You know, I personally don't care if it's controversial or not. You're gonna get what's good. If you're trying to fucking hook up with kids, then yeah, you deserve what's coming to you, whatever it may be. And sometimes I think that maybe getting the shit kicked out of you might work better than the fucking justice system. But with that being said, you know, there's street justice, as aforementioned, like with channels like DAP, who oddly switched over to that um, from how they did it before, and I don't know why they did that. Maybe they weren't getting arrests or whatever. I know I've mentioned this in my previous video. When when the country doesn't get his or her way, as far as the guy getting cut and stuffed, they all throw hissy fits, and sometimes they get arrested themselves. Now, I'm not sure if it's for the two examples that I referred to in my previous stream. Yeah, they appear to have been on a sting, and they may have went about it, the complete wrong way, according to the snippets I saw on that one channel exposing a catcher. And how when you see a channel like that, you're going to get fucking heated comments on that. Again, I don't know who the fuck's behind those keyboards, so or that particular channel keyboard. But anyhow, obviously, whoever that person was, they got the scenes that go wrong. Where no arrest or the catcher gets arrested. I mean, it could be footage from the original uploaders themselves. I don't know how old that footage is. It could have been from you know ages ago. Before those two changed their platform. Now, one of them was a small town catcher. The other one was Alex Rosen. You know, you type in Predator Poacher, you're gonna find Alex, and obviously he changed his ways over the years of doing that. But anyhow, that's not the point of this. The point I forgot to mention was what happens when the community gets involved, like a bystander. In fact, I actually saw this in one of DAP's videos, as well as a few others. And most of those channels are gone. You can't find them anymore, for obvious reasons. Um, I use DAP's old channel as an example, where they were interviewing, one catch, and sure enough, a woman's passing by, she overhears everything, and she fucking chases the guy. The guy naturally takes off and almost gets hit by an oncoming car. So that kind of ties to my point is, if you're doing that, you are technically assuming responsibility. I'll buck the trend a little bit. You're assuming responsibility for the well-being of that catch, so they can go through the proper due process that should take place. Now, again, there's a school of thought where if the predator self-deletes, and we'll use the classic Dateline one as the prime example. There were a couple others that surfaced where they the self-delete or attempt to make some other gesture, under duress or stress or whatever the fuck term is. then the catcher, they're actually responsible for that, and they could play a small partial role in that, and they could lose everything, including their channel and their ability to keep doing that. So that's the other risk factor. I've already covered what happens when the predator retaliates. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. Ooh, I made a sale on eBay. But anyhow, that's the one thing. When the community gets involved, or case in point, DAP. Now they beat the crap out of them. If somebody dies or gets hospitalized due to injury, guess who's liable? The catcher. It's the same thing with police. We saw that with the George Floyd case. They were held accountable. Now, that's a whole other topic in of itself. Did they go too far? Probably. That's a whole other topic in of itself. But something went wrong in that versus all the 99.99% of other instances where cops deal with black suspect, and the black suspect still lives. But I'm not going to get into that for this video. Which is often why the only ones you often see recorded by the catchers are the ones that go right. So somebody somewhere is recording the ones that go wrong. I don't know who or how, but that's what's going on. Things can go wrong, and it falls on the catcher. And case in point, the district attorney, his sister's rich. Now, I don't know if they had a close relationship or not, but all of a sudden when that happened, all of a sudden she came out of the woodwork, sued NBC, and the rest. And I'll throw an off-topic example: the Daniel Penny incident. When he choked out that that black gentleman who was threatening people on the train, and now his father is surfacing, because there's money involved. So I guess that indicates you're worth more to your family than a lie, but that's a whole other video in itself. Anyhow, it's a very dangerous line of work, and to the ones that do it right, keep on doing it. I got no problem getting, these perps off the street. I got no problem, but at least make sure you have the correct guy, because that's a whole other factor, which I did mention in my previous video. And if DAP gets if DAP gets the wrong guy and they go their method of beating the crap out of him, guess who's going to get in trouble? Anyhow, that's just my final thoughts. Make sure, if you're doing that line of work, make sure you follow every fucking possible procedure that will lead to a conviction. Do what Skeety Gene does. He sets up a sting house, just like Chris Hansen did. And then with something like that, where they go to you, as opposed to a fucking Walmart or fucking some other place of business, that basically means their life is going to be over. There's going to be no technicality, especially since they get law enforcement involved. Anyhow, that's my final thought for this topic. I'll talk to you.